Welcome to today's episode of Rassegna Caffè Live. I'm your host, Camilla Tettoni, and today we're exploring a truly important and powerful event that is making waves on the global stage. We're going to talk about the Safer to Be Me Summit. LGBTQ plus rights are under increasing threat in many parts of the world, from political shifts to the rise of populist leaders and discriminatory laws. It's a challenging time for equality and inclusion. But it's also a time when solidarity, awareness, and global collaboration are more important than ever. This year, the Safer to Be Me Summit is back, bringing together activists, politicians, businesses, and everyday allies from around the globe, all working towards the same goal to make the world safer for LGBTQ people. With a series of thought provoking discussions, workshops, and community building activities, the summit is shining a light on the urgent need for stronger protections, visibility, and representation for LGBTQ communities. The summit's theme this year is LGBTQ rights and allyship, local to global, a reminder that the fight for equality knows no borders. Whether it's access to healthcare, protection from violence, or the right to love freely, these are issues that affect us all, and standing together as allies is crucial to making real and lasting change. But it's not just about the summit itself, it's about what happens afterward. How can we, as individuals and organizations, carry the momentum of this event into our communities and advocate for LGBTQ rights in our own spaces? What will it take for the conversation sparked here to translate into real, tangible progress? I'm very happy to co host this episode with Rodrigo Tadeu Guimarães Jales, a multilingual legal researcher, human rights advocate, and social entrepreneur. With a master's in international law from the University of Sorbonne in Paris, he has worked with institutions like the United Nations, Human Rights Watch, and the International Law Association, focusing on human rights, migration, and policy innovation. He is also a passionate LGBTI rights advocate, working on global campaigns to protect sexual and gender minorities. Beyond research, he leads Iluminados, a project providing educational support to Afro-Brazilian youth in favelas. Hi, Rodrigo. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Camila. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. I'm very happy to co host this episode with you. And I and Rodrigo are going to have a conversation with Drew Dalton, a prominent voice in the LGBTQ movement. Drew is at the forefront of the Safer to Be Me Summit and has been a passionate advocate for LGBTQ rights worldwide. With 20 years' experience in the NGO sector and in education, Drew was, until 2024, a senior lecturer in sociology at the University of Sunderland, specializing in global LGBTQ rights, activism, international development, and global health. An award-winning teacher, trainer, and activist, Drew is currently the founder and CEO of Report Out, an international human rights organization documenting human rights abuses against LGBTQ populations across the globe. Alongside this, Drew is also a company director of Drew Dalton Consulting, a trustee of a number of charities, and is currently writing a book called Broken Rainbow with Bloomsbury Publishers, discussing the nature of global queerphobia and what this looks like in different regions of the world. Drew was previously voted by the Pride Power list as one of the top 100 most influential LGBTQ people in the United Kingdom. So I'm very, very happy to have this conversation now, both with Rodrigo and Drew, as they are amazing people and great activists. And these are very important topics to talk about. So, Drew, thank you so much for being here. My first question for you would be, the Safer to Be Me Summit brings together global voices on LGBTQ rights. What key outcomes do you hope to achieve from this year's event, and how can they drive real change worldwide? Thank you. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Camilla, and thank you for having me as well. It's wonderful to be on here, it really is. So Safer to Be Me is the first of its kind. In the UK, we tend not to have international LGBT conferences or summits or anything similar to that. So this will be the first of its kind in many, many ways. What we're going to do is have a week-long program of events held in the northeast of England, predominantly around Newcastle upon Tyne. We're expecting 20 plus countries in attendance and about 500 people at our main conference, which is over 2 days. and many, many more zooming in online from around the world, which is really exciting. The real outcome we want to achieve from this is to sign a huge global compact. Sorry. The Global Compact's aim is to stand in solidarity in these very divided times where we are seeing the weaponization of queer people worldwide. We're seeing the increased criminalization in nation states. So, for example, when I started Report Out 5 years ago, we were talking about 75 countries which criminalized consensual same-sex behavior. Now it went down to 62. Now it's gone up to 65. And we're hearing rumors of other countries being emboldened by populist leaders and authoritarian governments. So our outcome really is to bring everyone together from that room, from that conference, from the summit, from the whole week to sign this global compact. And we're working to design this with the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, who are going to help us in the writing of this to make sure that it has that real high standard of solidarity statements. So to read kind of similar to like the Human Rights Declaration. So we think in these divided times, these changing times, that this is our way to say we're stood together in allyship, in cooperation. And that's my key outcome I want from this, alongside, of course, everyone having an amazing time and and seeing the beautiful region that we live in, but also importantly, bringing us together in one space when we're increasingly being divided.
Thank you very much, Drew. I'm so sorry for the noise, but thank you very much. Very, very inspiring. My second question that I would like to address is like LGBTQ plus rights are under threat in many parts of the world due to political shifts and rising of anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric. What are the most pressing challenges right now, and how can international solidarity help overcome that?
Well, 2024 was the year of the elections, and we saw over half of the world's population go to the ballot box and to vote. The majority, sadly, of those nation states voted either to continue an authoritarian regime, and in some cases, those elections were not fair. But also they voted to move to the far right and or a populist leader. So increasingly, we're seeing much more of the world, if we look across at Italy, or if we look at the growth of the AfD in Germany, we're seeing Europe really shifting to the right. It was the UK and I think and Spain, obviously, who have shifted to the left. But it's really interesting to see, but also worrying. So with some of those kind of rights being under threat have meant that we have strong arm style authoritarian governments like Donald Trump, who are rolling back the LGBT rights progress, not just internally in the USA, but we're seeing other countries being emboldened by that. So, for example, we are hearing leaked information that Turkey is now about to criminalize LGBT rights for the first time in its own history as a country. They weren't, I think it was one of the first countries to decriminalize when it was the Ottoman Empire over 100 years ago. And so now we're seeing countries being emboldened by this. But as well, we also face a challenge, not just from far right and authoritarian governments, but by the evangelical Christian movement, which is coming out of the USA and increasingly affecting Latin America. So we're seeing kind of all of these challenges. So whether it's Putin, who's sponsoring far-right thugs and neo-Nazi groups, or it's, on the other side, evangelical Christian movements who are working in cahoots with gender-critical feminist movements and authoritarian governments, it's a worrying time. And so really what we want to be seeing is international solidarity. I think we maybe need to find a new story, because I think what we've ended up doing is bathing somewhat in our luxuries. I think we've seen we saw the gradual decriminalization happening at one point, tried to become much more about a party, less than a protest. And I think what we now need to be doing more so than ever is changing our story to pump up the positive news, but also the political news too. Everyone feels in a sense of disarray because we've seen the pause of international development money, USAID, all these things have had knock-on effects. And I think we need to be pulling together more than ever. So those states who are friendly to our cause, those who are actively engaged in LGBT rights, we should be really engaging with them, getting them to think about how they can support what we do at the UN. Because behind all of this, really worryingly, this year is the year of a reaffirmation of the UN's independent LGBT expert. They might not pass this year. Countries may overwhelmingly vote against his remit. And that's really concerning. So we'll have no UN representation. And if so, then we need friendly governments on side. So I think we need to be working at a high level like that, but at the same time, we need to be changing hearts and minds on the ground. And some of that, I think personally, is that we need to stop infighting as a movement. The LGBT community needs to bond together despite our differences, and we need to be bonding together more than ever before because that level of solidarity is the only way we can overcome this. And to bring allies on board increasingly with us, not maybe shouting at them, telling them that they've done it wrong, but by bringing them on board and acknowledging their mistakes and coaching them along the journey.
Drew, allyship is a major theme of the summit. In countries where LGBTQ plus rights are heavily restricted, what can activists, businesses, and governments do to support LGBTQ plus communities and push for progress?
Oh, I think there's a great deal that can still be done. So it is a major theme of the summit. It's this is the way forward now. We've got a rocky few years ahead of us, and that's not just for LGBT people. That's women's rights, that's civil rights, that's all sorts of rights. First of all, I think we need a lot more working together. I think we need to be bringing together trade unions, the women's rights movement, queer rights movements, all of the others together, and we need to be talking a lot more. I also think we need to be using friendly ambassadors because in a country where your rights are really restricted, like for example, some Arab nation states, particularly in the Gulf region, then embassies can actually be a heartland for LGBT people to meet up. And we are aware that sometimes that happens. Ambassadors may open their residences because they're politically neutral. So we can use our ambassadors really well with things like this. Businesses can continue to keep EDI at the forefront, even though a lot of people are running scared from it right now. But if we still have this notion in our head that a better workplace is a fairer workplace, which achieves better results and is proven in all of that research, we need to continue this message all of the time. So keep our businesses on board, remembering that yes, they want to make money. That's their fundamental aim of existence, but they can only make that money if they have a happy workforce. So we've got to keep some of this positive messaging on board, particularly in those states where it's going to get harder, it's going to be more difficult. I think we've got to use every opportunity that we can and just not expect NGOs to do all of the hard lifting because this has to come from everybody. We have to work together on this one.
Thank you very much, Drew. It's so important to hear this view of the action of the institutions in the society. And I would like to know, because visibility and the representation are crucial in the fight for equality. How can global movements like Safer to Be Me help amplify LGBTQ plus voices and influence policy on an international scale?
Well, this is a big part of what we do at Report Out. And I think the first step regards Safest to Be Me is the Global Compact, going right back to that one. Get everyone in a room. Let's start signing this. Let's make a big statement. And that is all about visibility, isn't it? That's what we want. We want to make sure that during this rollback of rights, that our own lives aren't then erased from existence, that we still exist. We're still there. You cannot ignore us. We're here. We're queer. Get over it. And so we need to be having, first of all, have that level of visibility. In terms of campaigning as a global movement, with Report Out, and I know amongst many of our ally organizations, we need to be pulling on every lever possible that we have to our disposal, whether that's at UN level or much lower down at nation state level with friendly politicians. Because remember, we are all someone's son or daughter. And so we have to pull on that. Many MPs or politicians actually have queer children. And so let's pull upon the friendly people. Let's pull upon those who are out and willing to be out. Sorry, that's my cat wailing in the background. If you can hear a cat crying, by the way, apologies for that, everyone. But we need to be, that's a key part, I think, for visibility and representation. Also, never forgetting the role of the media, the role of advertising, the role of Hollywood and Bollywood and Nollywood and all of the woods. Let's keep our representations going in these vital places because we need it.
And you kind of introduced this topic after the summit. Of course, this is a fight, an advocacy that needs to continue. So, after the summit, what steps need to be taken to ensure that the conversation and commitments made during the event translate into long-term, tangible progress for LGBTQ plus rights globally? You kind of already talked about this, but if you
Yeah.
want to dive into this more, I think it's very interesting.
Absolutely. So I think signing something like a global compact is great, but then we've got to move past that as well. So where do we take it next? So my thoughts on this, for example, as an outcome of Safer to be Me, is can we get governments to sign this? If we're writing this at a higher level than a normal document that we would maybe host on our websites, can we actually get governments to do this? I mean, we have governments who are friendly toward us, like Germany and Colombia and Mexico and others who are actually making progressive steps. So can we actually get those to sign it? Can we engage ourselves with the Equal Rights Coalition, which is an organization made up of civil society across the world fighting for LGBT rights and governments? Can we actually, and there's 40 governments in there who we can actually be getting them to sign something like this. It could be really exciting. So I think it goes beyond just that week, doesn't it, of the summer? I think we can do more. And of course, not forgetting about everyone on the ground. So here's your opportunity to come in, watch what's happening at these events, folks, and you get involved too. Because whether you're a tiny, tiny little cog in the machine, you're still just as important as a big organization. So come and get involved with us. Let's make tangible progress together.
Thank you, Drew. I would like to thank you so much for having been part of the podcast. I would like to
Pleasure.
thank you so much. I would like to ask Rodrigo if he has any comments, or even you, Drew, if you have other opinions regarding it, or things we didn't ask you that you want to talk about before saying goodbye.
Well, yeah, I think it's just remember for those people who are listening to this, and you might be in your bedroom at 2 a.m. in the morning because you can't listen to this when your parents or your friends are around or whomever. Remember that we're here for you. We all are. Whether you live in the global north, the global south, whichever nation state you're from, we've got your back. And we're not going anywhere. We're not leaving you. You will not be left alone. The world looks like it's going to get dark right now, but you are our light. So stick around. We're here for you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank Camilla for inviting me, for having me, and Drew for this amazing perspective that he has given. I think that my only message that I want to leave here is if someone thinks that the reality shouldn't be like it is right now, if someone thinks that's too small to make a change, it is because you never spent a night with a mosquito. So the change starts now. Tomorrow can be too late. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for this very, very important conversation. I think it was very thought-provoking as well as an invitation for everyone to join absolutely the Savor to Be Me Summit. I will include all the information related to the event in the description of the podcast as well, both on YouTube, Spotify, and the other 6 platforms on which this podcast will be published. So thank you so much again, Rodrigo and Drew, for your time. This was a very, very interesting and needed conversation. So thank you so much, and thank you to all the listeners as well. Thank you and see you soon.